What's going on, everyone? I'm here with my buddy Dryw. We are in Santa Fe, New Mexico. What brings us here, you ask? A man by the name of Forrest Fenn. If you guys haven't heard of Forrest Fenn, he's got a pretty interesting story to follow. And I'll let Dryw tell you guys that story. He's got a lot of stuff that he's been thinking about, working on, researching, and all of that has pretty much brought us to this point where we're at in a Motel 6 in the middle of the night in Santa Fe. So what do you got there, Dryw?
All right, so the poem itself.
What poem is it, or what? Explain it.
Okay.
Forrest Fenn and
All from the beginning. So
yeah.
Forrest Fenn, a retired fighter pilot, fly fisherman, avid outdoorsman, whatever, multiple man of many hats. Basically, he came to Santa Fe, founded a art gallery, and ended up making millions out of that business. Right around 1988 or so, I think it is, he ended up finding out he's getting terminal cancer. Decides if he's going to go, then he's going to take all his riches with him. So he comes up with this plan to go hide a chest in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe, and then ends up getting better. So as he says, it ruined his plan, you know. Later on down the road, somewhere when he was either 79 or 80, according to him, he decided, well, just because I got better doesn't mean I can't go ahead and hide it. So he ends up going out, hiding that treasure, and then he creates a poem that supposedly has 9 clues in it, and a book that has hints to help you with the clues. That's the whole basic part of it. So he did this around 2009, 2010. Obviously he doesn't want to say when, because he doesn't want his friends and family to know exactly when he hit it and know where he was or whatever. So the clues in the poem, all we know for sure is that the first clue is begin where warm waters halt. The treasure, he has since kind of spread the search area. Instead of just saying the mountains north of Santa Fe, he said it's in the Rocky Mountains north of Santa Fe, and specifically northern New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, or Montana. He has a map in his second book, the Too Far to Walk. Not his second book, but his second book regarding the poem. And that map shows the search area. So it's somewhere in that map. So begin where warm waters halt is the first clue. That's all we know. It's for sure a clue. From that point on, it's up to speculation what the clues are. But begin at where warm waters halt, take it in the canyon down, not far but too far to walk, put in below the home of Brown. So I think that's 3 clues. I don't think too far to walk is really a clue. Put in below the home of Brown. From there it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. There will be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and waters high. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down, your quest to cease. But tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. And then he goes on. So I think those are the clues right there. I think the rest of it is just legal information, basically, to say if you got the chest, it's yours to keep. So begin where warm waters halt. That's where coming from a fishing background, that was pretty, I mean, that's a thought that goes through your mind is, okay, where can I be fishing on this river before it's trout waters? So in the state of New Mexico, Game and Fish, they determined that all waters in New Mexico are warm waters. This is the only place that it shows up in a state regulation as warm waters in the plural. Everywhere is warm waters except designated trout water. So there's a a map from Mexico Game and Fish that shows everything highlighted in pink is basically the trout waters. The benefit to this, as our where warm waters halt, is that it's something that you can pinpoint with geographic accuracy, right? So you can literally walk there and say, okay, this is where warm water fishing stops and where cold water fishing begins. So compared to some other theories that we had at the beginning, like a hot spring coming into a cold river, there's too many variables there. What defines warm? Where did the warm water stop and where does it become cold? So it can't be something like that. And Fenn has said if you don't have the first clue nailed down, there's no point leaving your house. There's thousands of places where warm waters halt in the Rocky Mountains, but there's only one that really matters. So there's actually 8 spots in New Mexico that warm waters halt. But the way that we can determine the right one is if there's a canyon that you can go down from there. So most of the other ones, there's no canyons nearby, or they're not even in his search area in his map that he published. So we know it can't be that. What does happen is the New Mexico regulations, from Highway 502 in New Mexico to the west bank of the Rio Grande that's the end of the warm waters. So everything below that is warm waters, everything above that is cold water. One of the things that we like about that place is it's the historical setting for the house at Atowi Bridge. So Atowi Bridge is what it was the only way that you could cross from Santa Fe and cross the river for miles. That was the only access point, and that bridge still remains there. But so that's we can come back to that part. So the canyon down from there is White Rock Canyon. It goes down. This is all in Pueblo territories. Canyon goes down until you reach the old ghost town of Buckman. So on Buckman Road, it turns into a boat launch, and it's even labeled that on the map. So when it says to put in below the home of Brown, the put in is there. It's on the map as an actual put in. The home of Brown could be really one of two things. Either it's the pueblo itself, pueblo meaning the actual structure of the pueblo. It's a large community home made of adobe, which would be Brown, obviously. It could be that, or it could be Buckman itself, the old Buckman house. A couple things. I think out of all the places that are in the poem, he's hinted the most towards this area. Buckman itself was one of the only standing building really is the Buckman post office, right? So in his book, he's got different postmarks on different chapters, and those can be interpreted one of many ways, but there are exactly 20 postmarks on chapters. The Buckman post office was the 20th post office ever created in Santa Fe County. So that could be one thing. He also speaks about in his book where he had his mother was not really paying attention to him at the time. She was just looking across, looking for the postman, is how he says it. So again, that kind of sticks out in your mind as the post office right there. Another interesting tie-in that he made to this is the scrapbook 46, I think, where he talks about going to Khan's grocery store. And at the end, he says that when he was leaving the store, he watched the lady who he got into an argument with from behind a truck of watermelons while she was loading her gear into her truck next to her chainsaw. And we find out that Buckman was founded by Henry Buckman, who was he basically, in that same location, that's where he ran his sawmill, and he built his own bridge to access his post office. It's also located in Sandia Canyon, which is Spanish for watermelon. So we got the watermelons and we have the chainsaw, both in the same location. In that same post by Forrest, he says, I think I should stay home more often. So that kind of brings us back to thinking about the home. The lady who he got into an argument with, she had brown curlers in her hair. A lot of things tie back into that one specific area. So we know that's got to be either the Homer Brown is the Pueblo or the Homer Brown is the post office itself. But either way, it's got to put in there, and that's the most important part that we found on that. So from there, it's no place for the meek, which we equate to just directly across from. If you're at the home of Brown there at the put-in and you cross the river, there's Cañada de Buey, which means the Canyon of the Ox. So no place for the meek. The only time I've ever really heard meek is there's a Bible verse where Christ says, "Take my yoke, for I am meek, and you shall find rest unto your souls." And so the yoke ties back into the ox. So it's the implement that they would put on their cattle to plow their fields and so forth. He refers back to cattle so many times in his book that it's strange. I mean, you can tell it's an aberration. He's using it where it doesn't fit in. He's got a book or a chapter in his book where he talks about him milking his cow, and at the end of that chapter he says, if you have not learned to love a cow, then you will not, or if you have not learned to love a cow, then part of your soul will be undiscovered. When you think about that, that's a really weird thing to say, how loving a cow is supposed to be some way of saving your soul, but he's tying us back into the Cañada de Buey there, the Canyon of the Ox. Now, the next line in the poem, the end is ever drawing nigh. So, not that the poem's not directing us to go to the end, but the poem is telling us that the end is drawing nigh. So, the draw that goes up next to the Canyon of the Ox is Mortandad Canyon, which is Spanish for mortality. And you start thinking about that, how Fenn he wanted to go to this place when he was about to die. He thought of this place as he was dying, so he even slipped up in an interview and said, when you've got cancer like that, it makes you think of mortality. And he kind of like steps back and realizes that, oh shit, that's probably a clue. So the end is drawing nigh to Cañada de Buey. From there, he says, there will be no paddle up your creek. Now this is the part that has to make anybody laugh. So there will be no paddle up your creek. There's a creek there that goes up the Canyon of the Ox. Now what that creek is it's a sewage treatment plant. Just above it, the sewage treatment plant cleans their water up, dumps it back into the river. But from what I can tell, pictures I've seen of this area, people say they don't get very close to the river because it smells too bad there. So ties us back to that old saying, the proverbial creek. You're up shit creek without a paddle, basically. And so he says there will be no paddle up your creek. He's tying it back to being up shit creek without a paddle. So we keep going up the creek. There will be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water's high. So there's 3 waterfalls directly up that canyon where literally it's a poo water waterfall. So now for that, I mean, there's a lot of clues that are just strange in his book that would make your mind think like a child. That's what he said. You have to think like a child to solve this poem. There's one section in The Thrill of the Chase that he talks about how he wanted to cross the road and his mom would always give him a clean pair of underwear in case there was an accident. So why would he say something like that in a memoir? Why would he want somebody to have this image of an 8-year-old crapping their pants or having an accident? And it's because he's tying us back to that same thing. He talks about when he was in Spanish class and there was a fire escape that he would slide down. He knew how to slide down the slide. He was the only one in his class. But when he would slide down it, it would leave a brown streak on his pants. And again, that's got nothing to do with the home of Brown. It's just purely talking about the crap in his pants. You know, that's what he's trying to get you to. So we have water's high. Now from there, he says that if you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. So the blaze is an important piece. A blaze, as he defines it, could be a trailhead. It could be a trail marker, blazing a trail. It could be a mark on a horse's forehead, and specifically he says it could be a white mark on a horse's forehead. He says it could be a white rock. It could be a white marking, something that stands out. So basically he's drawing our attention to the color white, for one. He's drawing our attention to it being a marking that stands out. So it could be one of many things. It could be a piece of white limestone on the side of a cliff face that when you look down from there, that would be your spot. What we think it is the right at the top of the Canyon of the Ox, overlooking the waterfalls, is the White Rock overlook. The whole city is called White Rock, but the specific point right there is White Rock overlook. Now, from that point, if you're standing directly there, and you're looking over to the side of where the river is, so quickly down, looking straight down, it's a pretty barren cliff, I guess, but there's one thing that stands out, and there's a cross down there. From what I can tell, that cross was there at least at around 2008, and it's still there today. But there's something that I think is in that cross. I think that when you're looking from the overlook down at the cross, for one, it's an X marks the spot, so that's classic of a treasure hunt. Two, he always refers to there being an asterisk. He says that one day we'll all end up being nothing more than an asterisk in a book that was never written. He writes about his friends who have died and says that they're more than just an asterisk in his book, or in his book of days. That person who died is more than an asterisk. So there's an interesting piece to that, and in writing, if you have an asterisk, anytime you see an asterisk, that tells you to look down at the footnote. And so that means literally you're looking quickly down at the footnote and back up at what you were reading. If you've already used an asterisk in a book, the second symbol that you would use is called a dagger or an obelisk, which literally is a cross. So if he's already put an asterisk in his book, he's telling you that he wants you to look at a second asterisk. Look quickly down again. You've already looked at this first asterisk. look quickly down again, and now you're going to see a cross. He even has a post of a cross that he loves, and he says at the end of the chapter, or of that post, what mysteries could be hidden underneath the linens in this cross? History may never know, and that's paraphrased, obviously, but he's showing that same kind of mystery in that cross that he owns as what he would expect a treasure hunter to find. So that's the basic theory, is that it's hidden from the White Rock Overlook. Look quickly down, you'll see your second footnote there, and it's a cross symbol. I mean, to me, that's the perfect place to hide something, because nobody's gonna just go down. Everybody's gonna see the cross, but nobody's gonna think there's anything under the cross or around the cross. He said that many people have been within 500 feet of the treasure and not even known that the treasure existed. A few searchers have been within 200 feet, and recently he has said that he's not sure if anybody's getting closer. But what's interesting is if you're standing at the overlook and you measure the distance from the overlook to the cross, it's right around 480 feet. So it's within that 500 feet. And a lot of people are wondering, how could he know that somebody was within 500 feet of the treasure? Well, if he knows that that's a spot that many people go to, and he knows where the treasure is, obviously he just has to measure the distance there. So, I mean, that part fits up, and that's, there's got to be something. So either underneath that cross, just like he said in that post, that there's something hidden underneath those linens in the cross, or it's around the cross. And the cross is the last clue for you to look at, and then just search that whole area. Now, if you're standing next to that cross, you're literally 20 feet away from the Pueblo border. And he mentions in his book, in Important Literature, that he went twice to Borders, which is a bookstore, we know, but he never says that in the book. He just says, I went to Borders one day when it was raining, I picked up a couple books. Then he says again, then I went back to Borders. And so that whole 2 trips is important, because he says that he walked out to the treasure spot, he hid the chest, he went back, grabbed the gold, and hid it again. So he went twice from his car to hide the treasure. He went twice to Borders bookstore, but all he says is Borders. He refers to seeing 2 borderline biddies in that store, and then he has a chapter later on in his book called No Place for Biddies. So what is No Place for Biddies? The borderline. So what else is there? I mean, there's tons that could, in that summary, I think that's pretty much every clue. There's tons more hints. I mean, okay, so think about when he says, if you're, he says his first rule as a child that he made for himself was, you don't make the alligator mad until you've crossed the river. So if you're standing at White Rock Overlook, you're looking across the river, it's a Towhee Peak right there. And the locals actually call it Gator Hill. It's a Towhee Peak or Buckman Mesa, but the locals call it Alligator Hill. It looks exactly like an alligator. And I'm sure Fenn knows that. Another interesting tie-in is that there was a searcher, Randy Ballou, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He unfortunately passed away looking for the treasure, but what he did was he went to that Buckman Road, he followed the poem literally, and he put his raft in, went down the river, and unfortunately it was in January, so he had to get off the river, ended up lost, and passed away out there. But that would make sense when Forrest says that he thinks that people have figured out the first 4 clues. He never said which searcher, obviously, but Randy, we know, had to have figured out the first 4 clues, or he would have not got to the put-in below the home of Brown. Or at least the first 3 clues. When Forrest went out searching for Randy, the first place that he went was the White Rock Overlook. That was the first place he went to look for Randy. Because I'm sure in Forrest's mind, he's thinking, this guy went missing, he might have found my treasure. And in my opinion, if he's standing at that overlook and looking down at the cross, he's going to see if somebody dug up around that cross or not. That's how he knew that the treasure wasn't found, so now he had to devote some more time with the team into actually finding Randy. But when Forrest is posting pictures of their search for Randy, he specifically zooms in on the Buckman Road put-in, and he calls it by name the put-in off of Buckman Road. So it can't get any more set in stone that even Forrest is calling it a put-in. We know it's a put-in. That shows us that Forrest knew it was Buckman Road. He knew the area well enough to know it by name, to know all the places. So he definitely knows the area. When the searchers were looking for him, he said the searchers are out in the mountains looking for Randy. He also said that the cops were not being too open with their search. They were keeping, the way Forrest says it, he says they're keeping all the details close to their chest. Now that might be a stretch, but I think he was basically saying that Randy was close to the chest. He says, for all we know, Randy could be out in the seashores of Mexico with his girlfriend drinking martinis. So why would that even be an option if the treasure wasn't even near where he was? I don't think Forrest would have said something like that if he wasn't in the right area to begin with. For example, if somebody was lost in Yellowstone, Forrest wouldn't say, well, it's possible that he found the treasure and he's just having a good time somewhere. That just wouldn't have happened. He would only have said something like that as being a possibility if it was the right spot. Since then, he has said that it's not near the Rio Grande, but that doesn't mean where we're at is near the Rio Grande. In Fenn speak, he also said that it's not near a human trail, but if many people have been within 500 feet of the treasure, that's not many people going off the trail. So to Forrest, near is further than 500 feet, basically. We know that. What else, man? Is there...
What's the plan for tomorrow?
Alright, so the plan for tomorrow, we leave here, we get to White Rock right as the sun's coming up, so hopefully we can be down there before people start showing up. I think that as soon as we're right there at that overlook, we're going to look out and kind of take a peek around and see if anything else stands out. We're going to go out there open-minded, and I think we have for sure everything up to water's high. The only things that are left is we got to for sure find the blaze, even though we're pretty confident the overlook is the blaze. We're going to keep an open mind about the blaze and the next step from there. Once we find that blaze, look quickly down, the quest to cease. So the plan is go to overlook, look around. Worst case, if we don't find another blaze, then we've already got the blaze. We're going to go straight down and we're going to follow that whole Pueblo border. We're going to go straight to the cross, kind of look around the cross. And my hunch is that the cross is right here in the ground, and all he did was he picked up some rocks, buried the treasure, and put the rocks right back on. Because nobody in their right mind is just going to go down and start pushing away the rocks of a cross. So I think it's right under that cross. If not, we're going to search around, but we've narrowed it down to at least a 50-foot searching radius along that border. We're not going to go into the border because he wouldn't have hid it somewhere in Pueblo land where you can't get it. But I'm leaning a little bit more to where he wouldn't have hit it right on the border, because that's a little bit harder to define whose it really was. There's not a fence out there, so without something like that, it would be a little bit funky to try to figure out who owned the treasure if they found it. But we know for sure that all that land right over the site of White Rock Overlook is public land. There's even a sign that says this land was bought by Los Alamos County from the United States federal government for public use. So if we find it, it's ours, in other words.
All right, guys, so that is the plan, and you heard all the theories and the piecing it together from the mastermind back here. So we're gonna get some sleep. We're gonna get out there in the morning and
Go find a hidey spot.
hopefully we'll find it, guys. Wish us luck. Wake up, dude. You ready to change your life forever?
No.
Let's go find some treasure.
Let's do it.
New Mexico 502 west exit, then keep left. Keep left.
502, man. Is that where Warm Waters halt?
That's where Warm Waters halt.
Alright.
You were talking about that poem that he says, that he quotes out of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. So immediately after he's reading his poem, or going through his poem, he quotes Alice in Wonderland's "How doth the little crocodile improve his shiny tail?" You know that whole poem. It seems out of place, right?
Big time. Do you have it right there?
No, I lost all my data.
So we're about 16 miles from White Rock.
16.
Yeah.
And this, I think pretty much we're entering into Pueblo.
And
Pretty soon.
Of Pueblo, we were just talking about the House of Brown, and we were thinking that Brown is not necessarily a last name, but maybe because it's the Pueblo and the brown-skinned people live there, it's referring to the people themselves. And then you looked up something just now when we were talking about that, right? And what did you find?
Yeah, that book. It's a book about Pueblo folklore, Pueblo Indian stories, and it's called the Brown Storytellers.
So that's
A little interesting, huh?
yeah, that's pretty peculiar. So off we go to White Rock.
And what's cool about that whole Pueblo that we're going to out here? The whole area, if you look on the maps, it's actually sacred lands. So it doesn't even belong to just one Pueblo. It's considered sacred by all the Pueblo. Yeah, just over there, that's Black Mesa. The San Ildefonso Pueblo is all around that area. I can't get it in shot. There it is. That right there, that's a Towhee Peak. That's Buckman Mesa. That's our alligator across the river. Man, this area, you gotta admit, is pretty damn beautiful. Forrest always said that the treasure was at least 300 miles west of Toledo. And this Pueblo we're driving through is San Ildefonso Pueblo. If you look up who that was, San Ildefonso was a saint from Spain. Matter of fact, Toledo, Spain. San Ildefonso de Toledo. That's how he is. He'll put a hint out in the middle of the open and you never even know it was a hint. Yeah, about to cross the river right now. Alright, so here's the Rio Grande. There's the house on Otoe Bridge right there. Old tea house. Is that Fenny enough for you?
Yeah.
Alright.
So what were we were just talking about the blaze, right?
And how he followed the clues.
But we were thinking that how he says it.
GPS signal lost.
He says that if you were wise and found the blaze, and I don't think that's necessarily like a sequence or a certain order to get to the blaze, because he says that if you have found it, that means past tense that you've already found it, not necessarily at that moment in the poem, right?
Yeah. So in other words, all the clues in the poem you've been looking at from a map, and then you drive up to the White Rock, and it's if you found the blaze. Now you're starting your boots on the ground trip.
Right.
But everything up to that point has been getting you to find the blaze. The blaze is the most important thing, that we know that. But you wouldn't know it was the blaze until you figured out the rest of the poem. Should be the first, this first left. Pulling into White Rock now. Who would have thought the treasure was going to be this close to homes and everybody's out in the middle of Yellowstone acting crazy? What do you think? Is this genius to hide it out here in plain sight?
I think so. I think someone who's weak, and how do you say it?
Tired and weak.
Tired and weak is not going to want to put an extreme amount of physical effort into going somewhere
To kill himself.
right.
So Forrest has said. He said the clues weren't there when he was a kid, obviously, because he wrote the poem later, right? But he said most of the places that the poem refers to were around when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the places in our solve, the things that wouldn't have been there when he was a kid. Check out that Omega right there. You see it?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Take it right.
Oh. I don't know, looking at the
Overlook Park. The places that wouldn't have been there is so the sewage disposal was formed in 2004.
So that in turn creates the waterfalls.
Well, those falls were there for thousands of years, but just as arroyos.
Right.
Yeah. The Overlook obviously wasn't there when he was a kid. This whole park was created after the fact. Alright, so these are the mountains north of Santa Fe. Look at that alligator right
That's
there,
the
man.
alligator, right?
Holy cow.
Wow.
Dang. Oh man. when you see that,
that's breathtaking.
how long do you think it's gonna take us, man?
We got all day, man, but I don't know.
It could be 30 minutes. It could be 3 years later.
We're about to find out. One way or another, we're gonna go find out. Here we go.
What would you do if Forrest Fenn was just waiting there?
I got your email.
Look at that view of the Rio Grande right there, man.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's awesome, man. Look at that. There's that crocodile, huh?
Crocodile. See that
Man,
arroyo down there? That's the home of brown.
you see that? Croc even has an eye and everything.
It's got a snout right at the end. Yeah.
Man, that is amazing.
Check that out. That's Buckman right there. My hands are all shaking because I'm cold and nervous. Alright, so if we're looking quickly down from here, man.
Well, look quickly down and there's your cross.
The cross is right there.
And it's right on the border. So we're thinking X marks the spot, guys. And there's our X right there. We just got to make our way through all this stuff to get to it. It's a lot steeper than it looks like. So we're gonna work our way down, guys. There's your water's high, guys.
Check out that north-facing canyon wall with all that moss on it to your left.
Oh yeah. Look at all that. That's pretty cool. What do you think, Drew?
Let's go.
Let's do it. All right, we were just up there.
Oh yeah, so the trail also comes this way.
Made our way across the top of those guys.
You see any hiding spots in there?
And down.
Huh?
Do I see any hiding spots in there?
Yeah.
About 1 million. But I think the obvious is the cross. Man, that's such a cool view right there, man, with the sun coming up and the river in the back. Well, let's keep on going. You all right, brother?
Get that on film?
I got that on film. This ain't no joke out here, guys. You can fall quickly to your death. I mean, look at that drop right there. It's hard to see the depth from here, but it's far down. Getting there, huh?
So this right here is the area that overlooks that cross. So the border is pretty much right at the edge of those rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be in any one of these rocks or just right over the hill at the
cross itself.
cross itself.
And the border is where?
Basically, just kind of following that I mean, I really don't know.
Well,
That's the thing, you don't know obviously.
more or less.
But I know more or less now. Come look at this.
Wow. That is cool. Kind of exciting, isn't it? Technically, we're not close to the river, dude. It's way down there still.
Try me that, or throw me that flashlight.
And there's our cross right there. We're almost to that cross, guys. I'll tell you one thing that sticks out to me right now.
What's that?
I'll tell you one thing that sticks out to me right now.
Huh.
Is that rock right next to it.
To the cross?
Yeah.
Where? The big one?
Yeah, that one right there.
The triangle one? Yeah. Here you go. Get down there.
Let's get down there. Well, there's your cross, brother. All the time and effort and thinking and plotting and deciphering
It's brought us here.
leads you to this moment right here, man. This actually has a little wings on it, huh?
It does, yeah. Only on the bottom.
Yeah. You think at the head, maybe?
What's the method of attack here, man?
I don't know. Guess we flipped some rocks.
Oh, my bad.
Pretty rocky, huh?
It is.
You know what? He said it's not close to the Rio. Maybe it's on that side. Meaning that it's on the furthest point.
Oh, no, he just said it's not near the Rio Grande.
Well, I mean,
But
this...
he said that, like, in 2017.
I mean, this is near and that's far in any perspective, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. You think it's much deeper than this?
I don't think so, man. It's in a bunch of... Well, we can just work our way looking in all the rock. So we checked out the cross and we struck out on that. We turned over every single rock, looked underneath there, and we were almost 100% sure there was an X marks the spot, but we did find something that may or may not pertain to this. Dryw stumbled upon it. Check it out right here. What do you make of it, Dryw?
So the best I can tell, it says PSA, some other symbol, maybe LM, and 83 13. So
Let's continue. See what we can find. So now, guys, we're just scrambling now, I guess, huh? Seeing if we could find something else that sticks out to us. Looking in little crevices. There's so many places that he could have potentially hid that chest. 10 by 10 could be anywhere. Anywhere. Chester copper pot. Looks like Dryw found something. What'd you find, Dryw?
just a big old little crevice in here. Looks promising.
Go check it out.
Let's see.
That'd be a catacomb right there, huh?
Yeah. Without a doubt. Oh shit, don't be on the rock on top of me.
No one would ever find you in here, dude.
Oh no. No way.
You want the shovel?
No, I don't think I'm gonna need it. Man, there's all kinds of little cracks and crevices in here. This is interesting though. How the hell this got in here?
Huh.
Just fell in, maybe? You think it's worth digging in this area?
Wouldn't hurt to try. Because he said he's going to lay on top of it. Was there a new soft spot?
Let's take a look. relatively soft in here.
Is it?
From years and years of buildup, you know. Any spots that you think are worth
What is that?
piece of flint?
Oh wow, that's cool.
Somebody must have used that as an old scraper, you know.
Maybe they're building arrowheads.
Check it out.
Pretty cool. Pretty sharp.
It is.
Well, we found something.
Yeah, I don't think it's in here, man.
Well, it was worth looking. So over in that area is the pudding that we're talking about. Where he says put in below the house of Brown. And we're searching. What you see back there?
Just a million different little spots.
Found another little cave, guys. There's some burnt wood in there. Watch your step here. Some of these rocks are a little loose. Oh wow. Coincidence that they're laying there in the shape of a cross? Oh, you could stand back in here, dude. There's footprints in here. There's footprints in here. Man, there's more rooms to this thing.
Might be that room those kids were down there, you know?
This is cool back in here, dude. Come check it out. There's been several fires burnt back in here. There's some ashes back in there. Over here. Man, you could just hang out back here, make a fire. daylight over here. Some daylight over here. Huh. What do you think, man?
I'm gonna move some of these rocks over. They're not too heavy.
There's another little room back in there.
This spot kind of looked like something was, buried right here. You see all that?
Yeah.
It's just.
Come on, Drew. Find the gold. There's that waterfall. Water's high.
Not very good service. Okay. So. It's not giving me. It could be up under those rocks, and I could see that happening.
does it? Waiting for the waterfall, guys. Yep. Yeah, it has a smell to it. No.
We're used to that.
Yeah. Holy moly. That's a long way down.